Good morning, everyone. My name is Heather Odendahl, and I am the co-founder and CEO of W North. Welcome to my monthly series, Just Published. I created Just Published after I read an article a few months back of the top 25 leadership books of all time, and there were no women listed. That really motivated me to highlight women who are writing incredible books in business. And that is exactly where we are today. And I am so thrilled because I have Fotini on my show today. And I was saying to Fotini that I have been following her content for a really long time in the world of negotiation. Negotiation is one of those things that we often have a lack of confidence in. And as women, it is something that I really believe we have a superpower with negotiation. So a little bit about Fotini before we get started. She is the author of Say Less, Get More. She works with Fortune 50 clients on their high stakes negotiations. And when she's not strategizing, she speaks to audiences from Microsoft to Walmart about negotiation, communication, and leadership. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited. Can you get us started with sharing a little bit around your motivations for writing this book?
Yeah, thank you for having me. The motivation was sort of driven by others more than it was myself. It was years of clients going to me, when are you going to write a book? And I was like, yeah, sure, someday. And then I got an email in my inbox from HarperCollins going, we saw something from you online. We've heard your name quite a bit. We think you have a book in you. And I went, okay, if they're saying it and all these other people have been saying it for a long time, I guess it's now time to get this information to the masses. Because one of the things that frustrated me, I love my career, I really love what I do, but one of the things that frustrates me is, it's these large companies who can pay me a lot of money to come in, or it's these people who have MBA classes and they can do that. And people would ask me, can I come and attend one of your MBA classes? And I was like, no, because you're not a registered student and there's a wait list. So how do you get this information to those folks who can't attend one of those very exclusive opportunities? And so this was finally an excuse to now get it into the hands of so many people in an accessible way for everybody. So I was overjoyed to do it. It was one of the most difficult tasks, but it was very, very motivating to know there was people who wanted this stuff and there was an easy way to get it to them.
That's great. And I actually haven't heard that before, where somebody has been where you've actually been approached and pulled into it. So that's really exciting. Where did you start? Because you obviously came at it from a slightly different perspective, because you were approached by them. Like, what was the next move after you heard from HarperCollins?
It was really I sat down with Kate, who is the original editor who started working on my book with me. And then she went on to mat leave because she was very, very pregnant when we started. But we sat down at her dining room table and I said, I don't know where to begin. There's so much information in my brain. I don't know how to even start. And I actually walked her through one of my workshops. And I was like, here's how I've laid it out, because I've been spending years kind of crafting, how do I build up everybody's knowledge on negotiation, starting with the simple things and then layering on and layering on. And when I walked her through that, we kind of worked out a one-page skeleton of this really is the book. It was, how do I bring you through my workshop and sprinkle in a bunch of, stories that are going to make it entertaining, but also that you can learn from, not just my stories, but also stories from the students who write me term papers at the end of the year, because I've been saving all of them. And they send me at the end of the year, I had my students write me a term paper on who were they at the very beginning of this semester and who are they now, what's changed in terms of how they approach negotiations. And so inevitably they were full of these success stories. And the success stories were just like so uplifting for me to read. It's my favorite thing at the end of the semester. I could pass that off to a TA to mark, but I get such joy out of reading them myself. So I block off 2 weeks every December to read all of these papers. And so having saved those bits and pieces, I could almost work backwards. What were the nuggets that made them light up and go, this is what really worked for me? So I kind of have this really cool, almost like a workshop for what were the bits that were the most impactful. And those are the ones I made sure to include in the book.
That's an incredible source of information to have, and have the students' contributions and really highlighting what are the key nuggets, and also really relevant because it's super relevant and current content that you could pull from. So that's awesome. So I wanted to know a little bit about some of the different negotiation techniques that you discuss in the book and that you teach in workshops to your students. Maybe you can lead us through some of the techniques that you like to suggest.
Yeah, so I mean, we had a hard time coming up with the title of the book at first. And then when I started to think about, I just started talking it through with my editor one day. And then we kind of landed on, oh yeah, that's it. Like that was the kind of theme for everything that we talk about. It was say less, get more. Because one of the biggest themes and one of the biggest pieces of feedback I get from every single person who has gone through a workshop, who sat in a keynote audience, who has been in one of my lectures, they take away that I talk about finding your mental pause button. And so what that means is when we're faced with a situation that stresses us out, like negotiation, like a potential conflict, a conversation we don't want to have, our fight or flight kind of instincts kick in, and we do all of these things that make us go, oh, why did I do that? Why did I say this? I should have said that in the moment. And too often there's a misconception that the great negotiator is that fast talking person. People tell me, I don't think on my feet fast enough. And I'm like, great, that is an asset in negotiation. Pause. Take your time. Take a moment to allow the rational thought to come back in. Take a moment to think before you speak. Take a moment to be proactive instead of reactive, because that can be one of the big dangers of negotiation, is just shooting your mouth off or allowing your emotions to take control instead of channeling those emotions and going, how do I use this now to make sure they understand how passionate I am, to make sure they understand how important this is to me, and so on. So one of the kind of cornerstones of the whole book is say less, get more in two ways. The one is literally pause to regain your composure and tell yourself, I know how to handle this. I'm not going to be reactive. And pause to also think through, what am I going to say right now that's going to help me maintain my power, that's going to help me sound more credible? And usually that comes in the form of saying fewer words. It's using silence to make sure that they understand that you're listening to them and you're giving them that airspace. It's using silence to look that quiet confidence that we need in order to be super successful. It's using fewer words to not take away from our messaging, to be much more concise and confident about how we are executing what it is that we want to accomplish. So that's kind of one of the cornerstones of, no matter whether you're on a beach in Mexico buying a bunch of souvenirs with a vendor there where you're never going to see them again in what we call the more competitive side of negotiations, or you're dealing with someone that maybe as a client you're going to have to deal with over and over again for the next few months or even years. That say less, get more mentality can help you look much more confident and help to create the empathy and collaboration that's required based on your individual circumstances. So that's kind of the one that I'd say spreads across no matter what type of negotiation you're dealing with. It's the adage of say less, get more, find that mental pause button to help you be more successful.
Yes, and I love the alignment as well with that empathy of like listening, giving the person you're negotiating or speaking with the space, to speak and to learn more. And I think as women, we are empathetic leaders, many of us, and we also we tend to actually love to chat about this for a minute as well. Women, in my experience, tend to have this like more mutual beneficial negotiation tactic, or win-win-win. So I'd love to get your perspective on that with regards to, as it relates more specifically to women, and how we are always trying to be pleasers and make sure everybody gets something.
Yeah, and I talk about this quite a bit because I do speak at a number of women's events, or I have women pull me aside after I do a workshop, and they're always asking me questions. And during my MBA classes, it was always women coming to see me during my office hours struggling with this. And one of the things that I think works so beautifully for women, and this is all backed up by stats and data and all that kind of stuff, is that we are very empathetic. We are very good at putting ourselves in the other person's shoes. And that's why you often see women in senior leadership roles coming in to fix problems. So when a company is in dire straits, they fly in a woman to solve all of the problems. It's not coincidence that happens. It's that it is likely to take place because we're not necessarily bogged down by ego the way that men are in society. society. It's a socialism thing. That's how we've been socialized and we've grown up. Now, the damage that we can also do for ourselves is that empathy is a two-way street. What I say for women specifically is you have to be mindful of not becoming a victim of your own empathy. And what I mean by that is we're so thinking about the team. Like, women will go to bat for their team members. They will negotiate hard for someone who works for them, or they will advocate for somebody really with a lot of passion. But when it comes to themselves, they won't necessarily do that same level of advocacy. And they'll get so lost in what's good for the team that they don't go, what can they afford to do for me? And this is something that I emphasize multiple times in a keynote when I'm speaking to a group of women. It's, what can the other party do for me? You're not asking them to go bankrupt. You're not asking them to do something that they can't do for you. You're not asking them to lose their job or stick their neck out. You have to put on your selfish cap for a second to go, hey, what am I getting out of this? It's great that I've thought about them. Now it's time to pause, to flip it around and go, now what do I get out of this? What can they afford to do for me? And it doesn't have to be something that's going to cost them something a great deal. When you're talking about those win-wins and those collaborative situations, it could be something super low cost and easy for them to do, but it would mean the world to you, or it has a significant value to you. So that's kind of the double-edged sword of being a very empathetic person. It's, can you have the mental pause button ready to go, hey, I thought about them. Now it's time to also make sure I factor myself into the equation. Otherwise, it's not going to be sustainable for either one of you. And you may be asking yourself, why am I constantly burning out? Why do I constantly feel like I'm being taken advantage of? Maybe it's because you're letting them. Maybe it's because you're not putting your foot down, creating boundaries, making them think about putting you into the equation as well.
No, that's great. That's a great point. And I always, what you just said prompted me to think about, the yes mentality of always like being agreeable or always saying yes to things, and the movement that has kind of happened over the last few years where it's like, it's okay to say no, and to put your foot down. And, I'm trying to practice that a little bit, but also one of the things that I've been doing a little bit with, when people have asked me to participate in something or sit on a board or something, rather than just saying no, because I'm such a yes person, I've started to put forward my positive affirmations are, I'm going to give you some recommendations. I'm going to give you some suggestions of people that can do it instead of me, because I have a very hard time being like, no. So it just made me think about that. One more question with regards to, if you're somebody who's watching this and wants to become a better negotiator from where they are now, what's a good place to start?
So I always tell people, try practicing. Practice makes perfect. You can read until the cows come home, and it's great to create that self-awareness, but you really need to put it into practice. It's the same reason why, an NBA player can't just visualize themselves with the ball all the time. That's part of the equation, but the other part is actually doing it and actually throwing the ball and getting it in the net. So when it comes to negotiation skills, you may not think that you have opportunities around you, but you do. So use those opportunities for low risk situations. Call your telecom company and ask, what can they do for you to make sure that you don't leave? Go to a flea market or something like that, negotiate something. But there's even those little tiny opportunities every day. So I talk so much about channeling the pause button, and people go, how do you access that so much faster? What if you're having a conversation with someone and before you answer them, you take 3 seconds before you reply? Whether it's your spouse, your partner, your manager, your child, what if you just counted to 3 before you answered? If you got that into a habit of form, when the stakes are higher, when you're feeling really emotional, when you want to lash out at somebody and have those reactive moments, then your brain is going to get used to counting to 3 first before that even happens. Maybe you start with 3 and you move it up to 5. And then you start finding that what you'll see is people are more responsive. They go, wow, she's a really great listener, or I want to talk to her some more because she gives me that airtime. So there are those opportunities every single day where you can practice the skills that you would also use in those higher stakes scenarios. And for me, it's that little finding the pause button and being able to channel it more effectively is one of the easiest ones that you can do. Amazing.
I love that. I'm going to switch gears a little bit back to the book, because one of the things that with the launch of the book is that you launched this book in the middle of the pandemic. And many of the women that I've had on this show have also launched their book in the middle of the pandemic. And I would love to, learn a little bit more about how did you navigate that? Obviously, a different type of, you're normally out, doing in-person conferences, speaking, and, there's so many, guess your classes in university were all online last year. So how is the book launch and, everything that is in your business transitioned, and I hate to say the word pivoted during the pandemic, and what lies ahead for you as well?
Yeah, the pandemic was a blessing and a curse. I talk about, my analogy is it's the time to pull the arrow back in order to launch forward. So I've been using the pandemic to pull back. I was actually fortunate timing wise that I was taking a break from teaching because it is so much harder to teach virtually. And I knew I'd need all that energy because I'm still running training workshops for clients, for corporate clients, and to keep someone's attention for 6 hours straight staring into a camera and learning what I've learned about adult learning and virtual learning and attention spans and all that kind of stuff and applying it has been a real challenge. And I love that I'm now able to use that more effectively. And I've got some really great feedback about being able to do this. The blessing in it was the learning that I got out of it and the opportunity to slow down, because I was that person who was on the road and in airports. I'd be teaching Monday night and getting on a plane first thing Tuesday morning. That was my life, running around to conferences and to client meetings and all of that kind of stuff. Now that I have the opportunity I spent 488 days at home without leaving my bedroom. It gave me extra time. So this year I was doing a lot of free campus tours. So I would go into women's groups on campuses and talk to them about their first negotiation, their first job offer. So it's time I managed to squeeze in that I wouldn't have had an opportunity to do otherwise. It's the fact that I managed to do so many TV and media interviews at a time where I wouldn't have been able to drive around. I'm recording one on Monday for a station in Utah. Where I wouldn't have been able to do that and fly out and see all these people. So it was a challenge in that I love individual feedback. I love relating with people. I've missed the opportunity to sign a book. Anytime I go to a bookstore now, I'm signing books and leaving them on the shelf with a little signed by the author sticker, because I want people to know that I want to connect with them. I tell people all the time, connect with me on LinkedIn or on Instagram and share your success stories, because those fuel me and I share them with others and that fuels them too. So there is an opportunity that because we can work remotely and because you and I can connect on different sides of the country, there's that wonderful gift, but there's also the missing piece of when do I actually get to hug people again and be in a room and feel the synergy, especially when I'm dealing with a women's group and I get everybody to stand up and do a power pose at the same time. It is the most magical feeling in the world when you see hundreds of women doing their best Wonder Woman pose and looking like just these beautiful images of powerful women. Like I miss that. And so
Yeah.
I have found ways to connect on camera with people, which is lovely. But it's been a real pivot to go, how do I connect with people now in the chat? How do I connect with people through the camera? How do I connect turn your camera on and off to flash things and engage in a new way? So it's challenged me as an educator, and it's challenged me as somebody who is there to motivate people, but it's also given me contact with folks that I don't know that I would have had if it wasn't for a pandemic. So it's a blessing and a curse. That's the only thing I can say about it.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you're wildly positive about it as well too. That's amazing. And I've had some great experience with being able to go virtual as well with W North, case in point, being able to have you on the show, but also, have the access to new members from all over the world and new speakers from all over the world. And I agree from a branding perspective, especially as small businesses, we were able to get our vision out there to that many more people. And similarly, I've had interviews on media, probably more media during the pandemic than I ever did before, because of that, remote access. So, and being able to tune in from wherever. So, I would love to know, this is a little bit more of a personal question. What is the secret to getting what you want in life and work? So maybe like What's your secret and what really fuels your fire?
So what fuels me is, I mean, it's a sense of injustice. From the time I was a kid and my dad told me I wasn't allowed to do certain things, I'm like, oh no, I'm going to be allowed to do things. So I got to practice with him from a young age. When people said girls don't do this and, go to teachers college and get your degree and have your summers to raise a family, that's great for people who want to do it. That was not for me. So when someone told me I can't do something, it was like, oh, well, then this is what I'm going to do. So that's part of what fuels me. In terms of how to get what you want, I would say I really, as an adult, I started to master the art of saying less and getting more, of really listening. Instead of speaking to hear the sound of my own voice, it was going, what are they saying to me? And how do I use this? It's almost like Tai Chi. How do I use the energy that they're giving me and push it and use it against them? So it's listening to what they say and then going, well, when I heard you say this, how do we go about doing that? How do we go about changing that? And so whether it was using my dad's words against him or using an employer's words against them to go, well, you mentioned this thing, this opportunity was up for grabs. So what do we need to do in order to get me there? And asking really great questions so that I wouldn't be shut down as, why are you being so demanding? Or why are you, all of those words that get attached to women in negotiation. I started to play with my communication skills. And the more I learned about it as I, delved deeper into the academic world and doing more study of the subject, I realized, oh, all those things that worked for me are the things that the books tell us to do and that the research tells us to do. So it was asking really great questions. It was taking more time to pause. Those for me were the secrets to success. And that fire in my belly when someone says, you can't do that. I mean, I'm an achiever. This is what I do. If you tell me the bar is here, I'm going to surpass it just because that is how I function. I'm fueled by stress and achievement mentality, which is a blessing and a curse in itself. But that's kind of how I've always operated.
I love that. I love that. And so what's next for you? You've written a book now. You need another life goal. What's next?
So I'm actually working on it. And what's next is I'm going to be launching an online course. So one of the things that the pandemic taught me is I want to keep reaching more people, but I also can't spread myself so thin. So there's going to be a corporate version of where I don't have to fly in and meet people and be on camera for 3 days straight. So there's some self-guided learning as well as some live learning. And then there's also going to be what I call a consumer product where people who are interested in the subject, who would have liked to have taken my course and so on, will be able to do an online course with me where I'll drop in from time to time for live events. There'll be part of my goal too is to get people continuing to talk about it. So, if you have the book, talk about it with a book club, have the dialogue with people about what are you doing? How are you changing things? So that you're not relying solely on me. You're creating a community of people around you where you can go, hey, I was thinking of doing this. Can you practice with me? Or how does this sound to you? So it's going to evolve into an online community as well. So I'm working on that now and it should be launching very soon.
Amazing. If someone wants to learn more, where can we send them?
You can go to my website, FotiniIcon.com, or Instagram @FotiniIcon. I try to make it really easy so you don't have to spell the whole last name. And you can also find me sharing stuff on LinkedIn all the time.
Amazing. Okay. Well, if you guys haven't got Fotini's book, it's Say Less, Get More. Go to your local bookstore. Always like to support the small guys, or order wherever you can order books online. And I wanted to thank you, Fotini, for joining me today on this Just Published Live. And I really appreciate all of your tips on negotiation. And if anybody, we're going to leave some comments and links in the post if you want to check out more about Fotini's upcoming course. So thank you all for being here today. And it's Friday, so I hope you all have a great weekend and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.